Welcome to the Amplified Podcast Reloaded. Groundwork Ohio is a committed, nonpartisan public policy, research, and advocacy organization where we focus on the time when children's experiences and environments most influence their health, development, and life trajectory from birth to age 5. Our vision: that Ohio is the best place to be a young child, and every child has the opportunity to reach their full potential. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast on Groundwork Ohio's YouTube channel. Hello, and thank you again for joining us. My name is Vanessa Butler. I have the pleasure of serving as Groundwork Ohio's Senior Director of Community Relations, and today we'll be talking with Scott Neely. Scott Neely currently serves as the Government Affairs Director for the Children's Hunger Alliance, a statewide nonprofit organization whose mission is to eliminate childhood hunger by ensuring that children without access receive healthy food, nutrition education, and physical activity. Scott previously served for 26 years as legislative liaison for the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Correction, and for over 5 years as a budget and management analyst for the Ohio Office of Budget and Management. He has a Master of Science degree in agricultural economics from the Ohio State University and a Bachelor of Science degree from Purdue University. In addition to his position with CHA, Scott also serves as a governor appointee to the Ohio Commission on Fatherhood and is currently the chairperson. He also serves on the board of the Ohio Practitioners Network for Fathers and Families, and previously the board for the Community Economic Development Corporation of Ohio. He currently resides in Westerville with his wife, Dana, and has 3 children. Scott, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Vanessa.
Absolutely. Well, we are truly excited to have this conversation. So let's start with the first question. You were appointed by former Governor John Kasich in 2006 to the Ohio Commission on Fatherhood. Can you describe what was occurring socially and politically in Ohio at that time? And why was this identified as a need?
Sure. Thank you, Vanessa. And that's true. I was appointed by Governor Kasich back in 2006. But let me rewind the clock a little further because the Commission on Fatherhood started all the way back in 1999. I was actually a designee through the Ohio Department of Rehab and Correction at that time. I think the commission really formed as a result of a vision that a state legislator from Cleveland, his name was Peter Lawson Jones. He's actually now an actor, but at the time he was a legislator. And he had a vision that fatherhood was kind of a neglected policy area in the state of Ohio. And he had a vision for this commission. And with the help of the General Assembly and at the time Governor Taft, he supported this initiative. The commission was formed. And then it's a 20-member, well, I guess we'll get into that. But basically, the commission was defunded in the 02-03 budget, but then it was reinstituted in 08-09. So it has a long history, and I think it was to address that policy area that maybe was being neglected at the time.
Were there any other states, as a follow-up, were there any other states that Ohio gleaned kind of wisdom or insight from that have begun that work around that 1999 timeframe or even before then?
Yeah, and I don't think that there was really a model that I'm aware of that was being followed. I think states have had fatherhood work going on, but there was not a dedicated statewide commission and statute that I was aware of, and I still don't think there is one in statute. Although there's other states that are doing good work, but I think Ohio is the only one with a dedicated commission in the statute.
Thank you for that clarity, and that is a great segue into the second question. Right now, Ohio remains as the only state with a statutory commission that is fully funded and staffed at the state level. Do you mind sharing with our listeners about the structure of this national model and perhaps what other states are hoping to glean from?
Yeah, sure, Vanessa. So the commission, as I said, is in statute. It's under the Ohio Department of Children and Youth. It was formerly under the Job and Family Services Department, but that was a change in the last budget. So there is there's a staff now of five staff members, but the actual commission is 20 members. Six of those are legislators. We have four in the House, two in the Senate, bipartisan, equal number of Republican and Democrat members. And then there's also state agencies that are statutorily on the commission, and the governor has a representative. And then there's other governor appointees, which I would represent one of those people that have been involved with fatherhood work. And the commission really acts as an advisory group for the staff members. Kim Dent is the executive director, and there's four other staff, and they do a tremendous job. But the commission has previously had $2.5 million per year that it can give out to nonprofit agencies to do fatherhood work around the state. Currently, there's 23 counties that we're in, but I will talk in a little bit about. There's another 20 million that was dedicated in this last budget, and that's going to greatly expand the commission's work in the future. But we'll get into that a little bit more. The commission does meet 5 times a year. We're required to meet four, but we try to get in five. And our next meeting will be July 17th. We always meet at the Rice Center in downtown Columbus, and those meetings are open to the public. We love to have people attend, and you can also virtually attend the meetings. It's in a nutshell what we do.
Yes, yes. Thank you for that plug and date and time for those who would be interested in attending. I wanted to talk about the mission of the commission. So, the OCF's mission is to improve outcomes for children and strengthen families by helping fathers become better parents, partners, and providers for their families. Can you talk about how these roles intersect and why is it important to address all three?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think really it's important to address all three because we kind of know that, the ideal situation, of course, would be a two-parent household where mother and father live together. And we know that's the ideal for children. But we know that, a lot of other situations, we have to take fathers where they're at. And so sometimes fathers, of course, aren't living with the mother of their children, but they still do want to be involved in their children's lives and they can have an important role. So these kind of co-parenting situations, we know sometimes it can be volatile, but, we want to try to give fathers the tools to still be involved in those situations. Other situations we know aren't ideal, like fathers are incarcerated. The commission really works to try, that's part of our statutory mission, to try to assist those fathers. I think that's one of the misconceptions out there that incarcerated fathers don't want to be involved in their children's lives, and that's just not true. At
That's
least in
right.
most cases, it's not true. And so there's a lot of things we can do to, give them tools too to still stay involved with their children's lives. So I think that all those roles you mentioned are very important, and we need to try to give fathers the tools in whatever situation they're in to support their children and their families. And we know the outcomes for children are going to be so much better. I think all the metrics show that involve fathers, whether the child is younger or older, those children will benefit from engaged fathers. So that's what we want to try to do, try to accomplish.
Thank you. Obviously, this is an initiative squarely focused on fathers, but we often talk about supporting mothers and children. How can communities overall be more intentional about including fathers without diminishing the support of other caregivers?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think that we found in our work that a lot of times, and maybe it's not really intentional, that a lot of social services agencies, maybe courts, other entities will disregard the father, and maybe it's not intentional, as I said. But I think training those staff to, be more intentional to include fathers is very important. I'm thinking of one of our commissioners, Ann Ream, works for the Child Support Agency in Summit County, and they've done staff training to try to, have staff be more intentional to engage fathers. So think some of that specific training is needed. And yeah, that's something that the commission has really worked to try to facilitate, but we will have to do more to make things even better in the future, I think.
Sure, sure. So we here at Groundwork, Ohio, we actually released a paid family leave report at the end of 2024. And so mirroring that report with OCF's annual report, children whose fathers are more involved in their early childhood development demonstrate things like heightened language skills, cognitive test scores, richer vocabulary, and overall social development. As a father yourself, and I'm unsure of the age range. I'm sure they're a little bit
Yeah,
older
right.
than our
They're all
targeted
grown.
age range here at Groundwork Ohio. But I'm thinking about your experience as a father and a leader in this space. Help us understand why all of these outcomes tend to be yielded from that father involvement.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think that maybe that's one of the misconceptions, even that I had coming into this work. You think that I think it was recognized. I recognized that fathers had a huge impact on maybe older adolescent children. We all have heard the stats on things like drug abuse and school failure in school and things like teen pregnancy. We know that fathers have a huge impact on those negative statistics, but I hadn't realized the full impact of with younger children. Fathers do have a huge impact as well. And you mentioned some of those things like vocabulary and emotional regulation, impulse control, things like that
Yeah.
um, are hugely important. So fathers really throughout the age spectrum have a huge role in young children. And I was thinking of a couple things that I learned while I was on the commission. Like one area was the issue of like breastfeeding children. You would not think that's really an area where fathers would have an impact, but actually by fathers being involved and being supportive of the mother, that can be a huge impact on encouraging mothers to breastfeed.
Okay.
Or we think of safe sleep, safe sleep to prevent infant mortality. Fathers can have a huge role in that area too, just
Yeah.
by being supportive and advocating for those kind of safe sleep measures. So there's just a lot of things that fathers can help with young children, just as they are able to do with older children. And I think those are things I've learned in my time on the commission. And so, yeah, it's been very educational.
Understood. Can you talk about a few specific strategies that the commission uses to engage fathers and father-centered programs, especially when you think about the grant funding that goes to nonprofits? How do you even engage folks? How do you inform them?
Sure. So I think a lot of what we've seen is through our grant program. We contract with nonprofits around the state. We're in 23 counties right now. As I said, we're going to be expanding that further. But yeah, I think a lot of the programs that we're involved with, have to do with case management, direct services for fathers. They're targeting a lot of these are low income fathers. So they're targeting, factors like unemployment or even incarceration in some cases. But they try to work with fathers on, of course, co-parenting education would be a big thing. If they're not, father's not, living with the mother. But things like assistance with driver's license, getting those
Mm,
restored.
sure.
Um, of course, child support as well. And I think there's a misconception about, that we've tried to overcome the deadbeat dad concept. All fathers are not deadbeat dads, or a lot of fathers are not deadbeat dads. Most fathers do want to be involved with their children, but they oftentimes have gone underground when they did not feel like they were supported. And so when they get these supports, a lot of times the child support goes up as well because they don't feel it's an adversarial relationship as it was before. So, yeah, just trying to get these supports around fathers and, things like transportation, even mental health services. It really has made a huge difference, I think. And we just need to expand it to all 88 counties, which is in the pipeline. And we'll talk about that in a little bit.
When we think about the space of policymakers, what do you wish more policymakers understood in terms of the role of fathers and the role that they play in their young children's lives?
Yeah, I think for policymakers, just I think a report that came out a while back was pretty insightful. The National Father Institute had a report called I think they call it the $100 billion man.
Hmm.
That was back in 2006. and they actually updated it in 18 to the $154 billion man. But they looked at, the cost of all these, social assistance programs that are maybe targeted at the single mothers, and they said, how much of that could we reduce if we engage fathers and we had them more engaged, in their children's lives. A lot of that money could maybe be saved. And so I think they're going to update that report, but I'm sure it's much higher now than 154 billion. But
Sure.
this idea of, we need to get upfront instead of downstream of a lot of these issues, and how much money could we save in other programs if we just, supported fathers, engaged them, and did some, upfront work. The commission budget, I feel like is a drop in the bucket compared to this problem. So,
Mm,
but trying to get policymakers to understand, as they're dealing with the immediate concerns, and it's hard to get upstream of some of this stuff in terms of prevention. I used to work in corrections, so I
okay.
know about that.
Yep.
We're always paying for the problem, but if we can get upstream and start looking at, addressing these issues sooner, we can maybe make a long-term difference and not have to pay so much downstream.
That's right. That's right. Can you repeat the name of that report once more for
Yeah,
us?
that was the National Fatherhood. I'm sorry, I think I might have said Institute, National Fatherhood Initiative, NFI.
Thank you.
And I know they're updating it. Recently, Senator Reynolds mentioned this report on the Senate floor when she was talking about the 20 million, which I haven't got into yet,
Yeah.
but
We're getting there.
we're getting there. So at
Yes.
any rate, he mentioned it and it is being updated. So we
Okay.
confirmed that. So I think it'll be out this year, probably later this year, I believe.
Okay. Thank you for that. And speaking of the budget, you mentioned very early on in this conversation just the fluctuations with funding
Yeah.
that the commission has experienced. With the increased funding for the commission in this past budget cycle, are there any existing projects or new engagement initiatives that you are most proud of or looking forward to? Share a little bit about that for us.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to. So, yeah, we're excited that there was an additional 20 million put into the Fatherhood Commission budget for this current biennium, 5 million in the current fiscal year 26 and 15 million in 27. And that is to fund what's called the Responsible Fatherhood Initiative. And there's a requirement to contract with a group, I think it's called Family First out of Florida.
Okay.
And they'll be the ones administering the initiative, but that will help us to expand these grants that I mentioned that are going out to 23 counties right now. We'll be able to expand that fully to 88 counties by the end of the biennium, which will be fantastic. And
Yes.
there's also going to be a public sort of a public relations campaign as well. And I think this is going to try to engage more, more of the average father around the state. As I said, the commission has been focused on incarcerated low income dads in the past. But I think this initiative, and there's going to be a big kickoff at Ohio State coming up on June 15th with the governor. I think Tony Dungy's coming in, also the lieutenant governor, and I think Coach Day and some of the players will be there. So this is going to be sort of more information coming out about this initiative. But the point will be to try to, educate and engage fathers to, obviously to be more engaged with their kids, but also to help support them as well. And so I think this initiative, you're going to hear a lot more about it in the coming weeks, and it'll be exciting once it kicks off. So we're very very excited that I feel like our ship has come in a little bit. We've been a small commission with 2.5 million per fiscal year for a while, actually a long time,
Yeah.
and they've been doing great work. Kind of toiling in the shadows, but I think now there's going to be a little more public focus on the work, and I think that, like I said, the message is going to get out much more broadly. So look forward to hearing more about that and your listeners.
Absolutely. That is huge. We'll end the conversation with a couple of reflective questions. What is one piece of advice would you offer to fathers with young children, having been one
You're
yourself?
making me rewind the clock here, Vanessa. It's my children are all in their 20s now, but Going back to those days, I do remember and talking to other fathers, kind of a sense of excitement, but also feeling like confusion, helplessness. What is my role? What do I do here? A lot of different feelings going on, and I think it's important for young fathers to know that first of all, there's other fathers that feel the same way. So try to get connected with them because you can get a lot of support. But also, just you do have an important role, and we talked about some of the research. The father's role with young children is huge. We talked about things like safe sleep and breastfeeding, things like that. There's
Yes.
a lot of things that fathers maybe don't feel like. They think, oh, the mother has, the biggest role, which she does have a huge role, but the dad has a huge role as well. So I think fathers just need to, I think maybe be a little more educated, but also supported and realize that, sometimes they can even feel like mom is more focused on the new baby and not as focused on me anymore. And just a lot of feelings are taking place. And I think they're all normal. And I think just, recognizing that and getting with other fathers who can support you is very helpful. So I don't know if I said anything very meaningful there, but I was kind of
I
babbling on a little bit.
No, I think that all of that is meaningful. You're coming from lived experience, and the one theme that I heard was community. So
Man, it's huge.
fathers, yeah, so fathers identifying, as you mentioned, others with similar lived experiences, or maybe have gone through what they may be currently going through. So community is huge.
Yes,
Um,
very true.
we ask all of our guests this final question, and that is to please describe a scene from your vision of the future for Ohio's youngest children and their caregivers.
Well, that's great. Yeah, I think my vision would be that both fathers and mothers are involved with their children, and that we can support them in every way possible for the benefit of the children. I think a lot of that vision is starting to happen with the Fatherhood Commission. We're going to be in 88 counties by the end of this biennium. Fathers that need the support of these programs, fatherhood programs, are going to be getting it. And I think more just average dads too are going to be getting information that will help them. So I think the vision is happening. I think obviously we want some of these metrics like uh, you know uh, just the metrics around children that don't have involved fathers. We want to see those change, and obviously some of the downstream impacts we want to see those reduced. So that's the ultimate vision is we won't need all these social service programs that are costing the state millions of dollars. But we know that's going to take a while. But I think we're on a better path. So I'm excited about where we're going.
Well, thank you so much to Scott Neely for joining us for this episode. Please remember, if you care for or love a young child in Ohio, you are an expert and your voice matters. Amplify your voice by sharing your own story, supporting others and sharing their stories, and advocate for changes that will support families and young children in your communities. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the Amplify Podcast Reloaded on the Groundwork Ohio YouTube channel. If you wish to engage with Groundwork Ohio to amplify your voice and support policies to improve the lives of Ohio's youngest children, please visit www.groundworkohio.org. Until next time.